I'm Dan Cohen, and Norris asked me to talk a little bit about some of the recreation, or as he called, recreate, that we're doing in the fishing industry here in Cape May, New Jersey. So I should first welcome you all to Cape May. It's the nation's oldest seashore resort. It's the second largest fishing port in the United States. And I'm here speaking about something that's counterintuitive. I, and along with some of my peers, helped form a company to develop what we believe will be the first offshore wind farm, not only in New Jersey, but the first offshore wind farm in America. And by counterintuitive, I mean we actually began from the point of view that we are opposed to building built structures in the ocean, because a built structure in the ocean will be something that will make fishing more difficult and actually have negative impacts on our industry. So we began from opposition, yet at the same time, here I am today talking to you about what we've done instead. And you'd say, why would commercial fishermen really remove their opposition and say instead they'd be developers? And really it's this nexus of the political discussions that we're having not only in America, but in the world today. And it's really this nexus of really people, food, energy, fish in the future. You know, we've all seen slides like this before. We have about 12,000 years of recorded history. And if you look at it, though, the world's population really took off only in the last about 500 years. We had a very stable population. And what was the cause for this change? We really look at it in the last 200 years. It's much more indicative. Because really, for around 11,000 years, we had a population somewhere around 1 billion, the best that people can estimate. No one was really counting then. But in the year 1800, we had about 1 billion people in the world. And between 1800 and 1920, the population doubled to about 2 billion. Between 1920 and the next 90 years, which was 2010, we went to 7 billion people, so 5 billion people in 90 years. We can all speculate about what will happen in the future, which is always this real nexus, which we'll talk about, between energy, food, and people. But the reality is that that's a really interesting 200 years. And we start looking at this in excess. This slide is talking about energy sources themselves here in America, but it's really a model for the world. And you can see in the 1700s, the energy source of the world was what it was for the last couple thousand years, which was burning trees. And slowly you start seeing in the 1800s the beginning of coal, then early 1900s oil, then natural gas. You add nuclear in the 1900s, and you see really small amount of hydro, and really in the last 10, 15 years, a very little bit of renewable energy. The interesting thing about the slide, there's no total, but if you totaled all these together, because these are all energy sources, that's the total energy we're consuming here in America, you'd see a really big curve, just like that population curve. But really, what does this mean about food and energy? Well, first, before we started changing our energy, we started having technology, people learning more about science. In the early 1800s, people started improving yields from farming. Really, first was by actually mining cemeteries in Europe. And actually, in 1815, England was being accused of robbing all the graves. In the 1830s, in South America and in the Pacific, we started mining guano. But really, what happened in the early 1900s was two things: beginning to take oil out of the ground, and the ability to fix nitrogen by the Haber-Bosch process. Both of these together created a green revolution. And now we see these things happening together: population growth, green revolution feeding that, and all based upon a fossil fuel economy. And now you've all seen this slide, which has to do with what's happening in the atmosphere with the human burning of fossil fuels. And if you forget the 700,000 years, you just look at the last few years, which is human population since burning the industrial age, all the CO2 is going in the atmosphere. But what people don't think about is what's happening in our oceans. In reality, about 30% of the CO2 that goes in the air ends up in our oceans. When it ends up in the oceans, what happens is that actually PCO2, which is the CO2 of the oceans, actually makes the ocean more acidic. And though people have been talking about this, scientists, the reality is actually working much more quickly than people think. Off the east coast of here, fishing industry experienced major die-offs in Delmarva Peninsula of surf clams. We hired Rutgers University. They determined that it had to do with bottom temperature change. In the Pacific Northwest, Chile and China, the last 5-6 years, have been serial failures of shellfish hatcheries. All now, just in the last few weeks, again, if you look in the Google this, you'll see major conferences in the last few weeks all about ocean acidification. Additionally, just locally, changes in migratory pattern seasons. So these things we've been experiencing. So one of the things that motivated us to develop offshore wind was that in reality is that we were part of the problem. We burn a lot of fuel, we see the results, we can either be agents for change or victims of change. We decide that we could be part of the future rather than the past. Part of what you see happening right now in society is that we're looking for solutions. In reality, there aren't many solutions for a state like New Jersey. We don't have good onshore wind, we don't have untapped rivers, and the other solutions, such as nuclear, are not really palatable. And though people talk about natural gas, even though it might be a bridge, really natural gas is still a fossil fuel. Why do people look to offshore wind? They look to offshore wind because, one, it's a large resource, robust, continuous. It's very close to the base load because in the East Coast of the United States we have many people. It's very labor intensive, and everyone is interested right now in our down economy to try to develop new jobs. But the reality is that offshore wind is expensive. It's more expensive than traditional fuels. And this is really part of the political debate that we're talking about today in America. Really, what is the cost of fuel? You know, what should we pay for energy? Should we be investing in the future? And the reality is a lot of the political discourse talks about the market price as if market is market. But in reality, our political leaders don't really talk to us about the fact that there isn't a true market. That in fact, we in many ways subsidize fossil fuels. One, directly, example, our standing military in the Middle East. Forget the wars that are going on. Just the standing military since the 1940s, we don't pay for as Americans through a taxation on oil, so you know the cost. We pay for it through a general taxation. So it's a cost to the public, but you don't see the cost in your oil. So when you compare these two, you're not comparing apples and apples. Other costs are externalities. Externalities are really things that actually are impacts on us that we don't put a dollar value on, such as burning coal produces mercury. When we talk about mercury in fish and mercury with pregnant women, it is not naturally occurring mercury. It's mercury we put in the environment by burning coal. Who puts a dollar value to that in terms of pregnant women? It really is not a dollar. We haven't done that. But when we talk about trying to compare renewables, such as offshore wind, with the market, somehow or other we have this discussion that if it's not cheaper than today's fossil fuel prices, we shouldn't do it. The reality is we as a society need to make choices, and in fact, in terms of the fishing industry, though we're counterintuitively said, we're opposed to this, we're a part of someone saying that we think that we as a society need to make changes. The fact of the matter, other societies have made these choices. In America, we have not. In Europe, more than 20 years ago now, most of the European countries made a commitment to develop offshore wind because they saw it as a solution. Most of them were scared because when Russia shut off natural gas. But Germany, Denmark, England, France, Belgium are all building and have built offshore wind farms. In England, they have a commitment to make about 30% of their energy by offshore wind by the year 2020. Now, most people don't understand what the scale of this is, and we can talk later on about the scale because, example, in England, they're talking about building at least 10,000 turbines and installing them between now and 2020 offshore. So right now, annually, there's about between $10 and $15 billion of investment, capital investment happening, which is also then jobs. How did this happen here in New Jersey, and how did we get motivated? In the year 2003, New Jersey commissioned a report to see where could they get renewable energy from, and that report said, really the only good place for New Jersey is offshore wind. And what was our reaction? We lobbied the governor and said, no, there should be a moratorium. Actually, we didn't do it by ourselves. We did it with New Jersey Audubon, the American Littoral Society. And the reason for that was there was no regulatory environment. No one talked about the impacts on birds, whales, fish, and fishermen. And therefore, we thought we should take a pause. And if we're going to do it, we should do it right. The governor appointed a blue ribbon panel. That blue ribbon panel met for 2 years, and they came back and they recommended that there should be development of at least one offshore wind farm as a pilot. That pilot would then prove whether or not it was economically productive and also prove whether or not it was environmentally appropriate. And the reasons why they were recommending this, not only that we needed renewable energy, but that New Jersey was looking at the fact that currently we export all of energy dollars, whether it's to coal-producing states, whether it's to offshore oil, while if we develop offshore wind here in New Jersey, it would be development of a local industry based upon local jobs, local manufacturing. So the state of New Jersey solicited in 2007 an offshore developer to develop offshore wind. Now, during this time, I had led a discussion with other leaders of the fishing industry. And we decided that, again, quietly, that we should change from our position to something that we thought we could do. Part of this, we thought, was because we looked at the other people who really looked like real estate developers and didn't really understand how to operate in the marine environment, and we had all built businesses. So today, Fisherman's Energy, the owners of Fisherman's Energy, we have owners with facilities in Massachusetts, Rhode Island, New York, New Jersey, Maryland, and Virginia. We own well over 100 vessels. We employ thousands of people. And we quietly formed a company, hired really good people, and submitted a competitive proposal in March 3rd of 2008. We were surprised, the public, when we did that. Our proposal was unique, different than anyone else's. We've gone on to change New Jersey's policies. We're currently changing federal policy. We proposed at that time a unique solution. Everyone else proposed 350 megawatt projects in federal waters. It would cost $2 billion. And in fact, that would not really be a pilot. A pilot is something that you can gauge the impacts and then build big, and no one was going to give us $2 billion. So we proposed a demonstration project in state waters, very similar to Europe, where in every European country, the first thing that was built was a pilot, to build confidence amongst the public, to build the confidence amongst financiers, to build confidence in the environmental community. So we proposed that project. And we also proposed something else we're also working with the federal government to change, which is to make it clear that as we build more and more projects, there will be cumulative impacts, and we expect developers such as ourselves and others to make certain that the fishing industries and others who are negatively impacted, those impacts will be mitigated by our projects. What have we proposed? Our first project is 2.8 miles off Atlantic City. We are fully permitted. We've worked on this since 2008. We have all of our permits. We finally expect to have our last approval from the state of New Jersey BPU sometime in early 2013, begin construction by December, and will be built and operating, we hope, by Labor Day 2014. And it's a unique opportunity for the city of Atlantic City. You know, Cape May is the oldest resort in the country. You know, Atlantic City and casino gambling is the first resort of New Jersey, and it's a chance for Atlantic City to really rebrand itself. You know, part of that we did is we did public opinion polling to find out whether tourists would be in favor or against. One of the things you hear a lot about are other projects, such as in Nantucket, where there's been a lot of local opposition. Here we found significant public support, and tourists said 4-to-1 that they'd be more willing to return to Atlantic City as a tourist if there was an offshore wind farm built, showing that really the community and the public themselves are really interested in change. We've also done a number of innovative things. We've deployed, as fishermen, we look at technology. Technology is changing. We have the first commercial deployment in the world of a floating LiDAR, working with Access Technologies. The first in the world commercial deployment, working with Lockheed Martin, of a horizontal LiDAR, where we're working to measure wind speed and shear remotely rather than build what's been built in Europe, very expensive fixed towers. We're now doing it all remotely. We've done 2 years of baseline environmental monitoring for birds, whales, dolphins, turtles. We'll have a baseline so then we can do after-the-fact construction monitoring to see what the impacts are afterwards. So we'll know for future larger projects. We've done acoustic monitoring for whales and dolphins. We've done all our geophysical surveys so we can understand the geology. We've done all core drilling for the foundations so we can do our designs. We have all of our permits. And clearly, one of the major issues that, that's interesting for New Jersey is that New Jersey really would like us to be first. Why? Because there's a lot of opportunity to bring jobs to New Jersey, and one of the things that New Jersey is trying to develop is a manufacturing hub, not in Atlantic City, but near Camden, where we need to revitalize ports. There is a large 200-acre port being built today where we're working with the state of New Jersey to attract investment because none of this equipment is currently manufactured in America. To be clear, because there's no industry, there's no manufacturing. Currently, all this equipment is being manufactured in Europe or in Asia. And the idea is to bring those jobs and to bring that here. So the reality is that I wanted to talk to you today, or Norris asked me to talk to you today about Fisherman's Energy, about how a group of fishermen had gotten together, opposed to something, but recognized that opposition by itself wouldn't stop it from happening. And that in reality, that if we wanted to be part of the future and have the future look like how we want it to be, that we would have to stake in and take control and be part of that. And we really hope to bring to New Jersey not only the first offshore wind farm off of New Jersey, but also the first offshore wind farm for North and South America. And our goal would be to do it responsibly so that we can do this not only on a small project off of New Jersey, but in larger projects, utility scale projects, 300, 500, 1,000 megawatts, not only off of New Jersey, but from Maine to South Carolina. And one of our models, one reason why we have owners currently from Massachusetts through Virginia, is that we believe that these are local communities and that people in the local community have to be involved in construction of this new industry. And our goal is to build these facilities eventually from Massachusetts, Maine, to South Carolina, and do it in a manner compatible with the environment, and do it in a manner where we can mitigate the losses to those who are negatively impacted. So there we go. Thank you very much.